I was just saying the volumes might be a little bit wiggy between different sources, and you all can just adjust your own volumes as you see fit. Um, Disclaimers aside, let's get going. I would like to first introduce you to Kelly Jo's daughter, Rachel Burnt, who's joining us here from Iowa. And Kelly Jo spoke so much about you over the years that I feel like I've known you your whole life. And but I haven't. I just met you. So Rachel, as we start the memorial here, could you maybe tell us a little bit about what you remember about growing up with Kelly as a father, and maybe some things about your early life together that you remember?
Sure. Um, Having him as a father was a very unique experience. He was a very rare human being, and even though he was touring, he was still very present in my life. We were very close. We did a lot of things together, and I was lucky enough to be able to go on tour with him throughout my life as well. And I even would introduce him on stage sometimes, or sign CDs with him when I was a little kid. And the last time that I went on tour with him, I was in high school, and it was just me and him. And we drove across the country from New York back home to Vancouver. And that was a really incredible time to just spend, just the two of us. He paid me $500 to be his roadie. And
Good deal.
so there were just a lot of good times like that, a lot of quality time together. And I feel very blessed to have known a side of him that no one else did.
Yeah, he was unlike anybody else. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about my history with Kelly Jo. It's kind of long and complex, but the short version is that we met, we hit it off, we played a lot of music together, and the big thing, I guess, is that when he famously quit playing slide guitar, he called me and said it was nothing against slide, but he just didn't want to do it anymore, and would I take it over for him? And he clearly thought it was something that belonged in his music in some way, but he totally lost interest in doing it himself. And so it was sort of like Picasso asking you to come over and paint for him while he made dinner or something like that. Anyway, in this business, you don't really say no to people. So I ended up playing slide guitar for him on Slingshot Professionals. And then we toured both opening for him and being his band. And that was my group with Jesse Zubot, who's here today on fiddle. We were called Zubot and Dawson. And he played on a couple songs with us on our record, Hellhound on My Trail and May You Never, the John Martin song. And in any case, he dropped in and out of my life like he did with a lot of people over the next couple of decades. But as I was producing more and more records out of the blue, he asked me to produce what became Tunesmith Retrofit. And then again, I produced and engineered his last album, Brother Sinner and the Whale. So that's our history. But before we got going, I wanted to show you this funny little capo. Can you see that? Here it is. And tell you a little story about it, because it actually reminds me about him all the time, and I use it all the time. And it sort of sums up a lot of what he meant to me. And so when we started playing together, I was playing the Weisenborn, which is sort of like a dobro, but without a resonator, and it's got a big fat hollow neck. And the action is higher than a dobro. And I started to need a capo to play with him because he'd change the keys of the song so often from night to night. But the capo that you buy for a dobro doesn't work on a Weisenborn. So I asked him if he had any ideas, and he looked at it for a sec, and he said, I know how to fix that. Let's go to the hardware store. So we did. He took me to the hardware store. He bought some weld bond glue, which he was strangely really excited about. He loved weld bond glue. And he said, you know, with weld bond, you can basically fix anything in a house or on a guitar. And so it was like his favorite thing to get. So we bought some weld bond, and we went to the corner store and bought some popsicles, ate them. And then he pulled out a knife and carved the popsicle sticks, glued mine to his, cut the two of them together so they were capo sized, and glued them to this capo for me here. And that glue on those popsicle sticks has been on there ever since. That was 18 years ago. And I've used this. I used it on every day on that tour, every day on that session. And, you know, it's never had a problem. And I think it goes to say, it sort of shows a lot of things about Kelly Jo. He loved fixing things. He loved tweaking guitars, and he loved being helpful to people in small ways and looking after people. So this capo reminds me of you, Kelly Jo. every time I look at it. So we're going to get going here with a few of the video tributes that have come in, and there's a bunch of them, and we'll be scattering them throughout the program here. This first one comes in from Jim Fleming. Oops, sorry. Yeah, this first one comes in from Jim Fleming, who was his agent for many years, and I'm just finding the button to share my screen. There we go. So this is from Jim Fleming.
I'm Jim Fleming. My agency, Fleming Art, represented Kelly Joe for about a decade. And I've been doing this for a little over 40 years, and occasionally I work with an artist who I call an artiste. And an artiste for me is someone that every fiber of their body is artist. And it's rare, but Kelly Joe was rare. He was just one of the best musicians I've ever worked with, and I considered him a friend. And I am so sorry for his passing, and I send out all my love and condolences to his family and his friends.
Thank you, Jim. And next we're going to share a video that we got from Jeffrey Foucault, who's an amazing singer and songwriter who toured and played a bunch with Kelly Joe over the years. And he sent this in for us to see. This is Jeffrey Foucault.
The first time I was out on the road with Kelly Joe, we were in California. He was making a live record and I was opening up the shows. And at the end of that little trip, we're standing outside having a smoke at the Casbah, this little rock club in San Diego. Right by the airport, you could hear the planes going by overhead. And we were saying goodbye, and he tucked $200 into my front pocket. And $200 at that point in my life was a lot of money. And he gave me a hug, and he sent me on my way. And I want to tell you, I've spent years paying that $200 to a whole lot of people, and I will never get out of Kelly Joe's debt. Not for the money, but for the gesture and for the example that he set of being willing to follow your own line musically, artistically, no matter what's going on. Miss you, Kelly Joe.
Thank you, Jeffrey. You know, that's funny because he did the exact same thing to me with $200, and maybe that was his amount. He actually gave me this jacket. That's why I'm wearing this jacket. It says William Hunter Farms. This was a jacket that he picked up on a tour we were on at a antique store somewhere, and I coveted the jacket. I was always saying, that's a wicked jacket, man. And at the end of the tour, he handed me the jacket, and there was $200 in the pocket of it. And I guess that was just something that he did. We're going to hear now from the great songwriter Greg Brown, who sent in this video to remember Kelly Joe. And here is Greg Brown.
Kelly was someone I was very glad to know. He was a Baba black sheep, and he had plenty of wool. I used to read his emails backward to see if I could make more sense of them. He had a touch on a guitar to make an angel weep and flap his or her wings. He was on a quest. He was looking for water from a deeper well. His singing and his guitar were married in the Church of Elvis in Portland, Oregon. He rolled away the stone. He carried an extra pork chop in his pocket just in case. Many and many a night I know I'll look up at the full moon and ask my old friend, which side of the moon are you on tonight, my dear?
Thank you, Greg Brown. Love that guy. Kelly Joe spent some time up at Jorma Kaukonen's Fur Peace Ranch some years ago, which is very cool. I think it's in Ohio. I'm not totally sure. It's like I think he lives there, but he puts on guitar camps. And Kelly Joe was one of the instructors there at some point, and probably did a bunch of concerts there over the years. And Jorma Kaukonen, of course, is a great guitar player, but was also the one of the founding members of the Jefferson Airplane. And he sent in this little tribute that we would like to share with you. And so this is Jorma Kaukonen.
I met Kelly Joe, gosh, I'm thinking early 2000s at Merlefest. And I remember at the time I thought he's one of those amazing artists I'd ever heard. We were so fortunate shortly thereafter to have him play for us and teach for us at one of our early sessions at the Fur Peace Ranch. I always thought it would have been nice to get to know him better, maybe play some music. It just wasn't to be. Our paths didn't cross in that way. But he was a great guy, a great artist. He'll be sorely missed.
So true. Thank you, Jorma. So right around the time I started playing in Kelly Joe's band, I guess that's what it was sort of his band. But right after that, he started up another band that was like an acoustic power trio with Keith Lowe and Scott Amendola, both incredible musicians. Scott's from the Bay Area and Keith is from Seattle. And they did a lot of touring together and made some incredible music. And I'd like to share a tribute with you now from the bassist, Keith Lowe, who sent this in from Seattle. And here is Keith Lowe.
Hello, my name's Keith Lowe, and I was fortunate enough to work with Kelly Joe. I played bass on Slingshot Professionals and Tunesmith Retrofit, those albums. And then I was also really blessed to play with him live. When he embraced having, playing with a group, which he didn't do, hardly at all. So I really felt blessed that he shared his space with me and drummer Scott Amendola. We had a lovely trio and we toured quite a bit, and I gotta say, you all know how special he is and what an amazing musician. So to be able to interact with him and be part of his creative process was really, really exciting and really rewarding, and something I'll never forget. He just was so adventurous and so soulful and daring and unafraid, and just every night was something different, and man, we just had to be on our toes, and it was really lovely. We got to play together long enough that we kind of developed a musical language, and then a language off stage too, which was another thing. We had a lot of fun. So yeah, just it was really special. And his songs were, as you know, just so beautiful, and every night we got to explore those songs in a really in-depth way. And his songs are stories, and each night the story was different. We never knew what was going to happen, and it was just always so fun and exciting. I can't say enough about it, really. I'm going to miss him, but the world is a much better place for his music. So, Kelly, miss you, but safe journeys wherever you are. I love you. Thank you for everything you shared with me.
Thank you, Keith. We have one more video to share with you at this point, then we're going to talk about some other stuff, and we will share some more videos in a few more minutes just down the line. But we have one more here from Andy Bauma, who is a fan of Kelly Joe's, and he sent in this sweet little tribute that we wanted to share with you. So this is, could be Andy or Andrew Bauma. I'm not totally clear, but I'm sure he will tell us.
Hi everyone, my name is Andy Bauma and I teach college biology in Oregon. I've been a big fan of Kelly's music since '96, when I first heard his singing on Tony Furtado's album Roll My Blues Away. I first saw him play live at the Memorial Student Union in Madison, Wisconsin in '97. His music meant a lot to me, so I'm very honored to be able to share a brief story with you all here today. So my story is about how he could do things on guitar seemingly effortlessly, things that would take normal people all day to do. I saw him so many times over the years that some of the shows are a bit blended in my memory, but I know that at the beginning of his touring, he only brought his Gibson, that he had converted to lap style, and he played lap style exclusively then. Then in the late 90s, he started touring with two guitars, a standard guitar that he used to play fingerstyle, and his Gibson that he had set up for lap style. Then, as everyone here knows, to the chagrin of many in his audiences, he stopped playing lap style altogether around 2004. When he would get a request at a show, he would say something like, "I quit playing slide guitar years ago." So he also wasn't afraid to exaggerate a little bit. But anyway, my story is from 2003, 2004, not sure exactly. I think it was at the Cafe Carp in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. So I went to the show, and I noticed that Kelly had only brought one guitar. And my heart sank a little bit because I was a big fan of his lap style playing. Well, he went on to play an amazing set on standard guitar. And then towards the end of his set, he said something like, "Excuse me, folks, while I mess with my guitar. Sorry, Mr. Soundman." He flipped his guitar onto his lap and loosened up the strings, inserted the extension nut, tightened the back up, and tuned, all while continuing to mumble into the mic. He did this all in less than a minute. He then went on to play out the rest of the set on lap slide, and it was amazing. I remember he finished with "Good Night, Irene." So he did this complicated guitar conversion as quickly and as effortlessly as if he were just tying his shoe. It totally blew me away. Well, thanks for listening to my story. Peace.
Thanks, Andy. And I remember him doing that too. He could do that in a matter of seconds, which was incredible. I also saw him change strings in about 8 seconds once. He was a little Superman. So we'll play some more of these videos in a little bit. But as we move through the program here, I thought it'd be nice to look back on each of Kelly Joe's solo records and take a moment to remember a few things about each one and listen to a snippet of music from each. And I'm sure that all of us here know his music, but as with so much of it, you can get new things from it every time. And sometimes you just need to dive back in and listen to it again. And hopefully listening to these clips here today will make you want to return to the full albums and crank them up on your own. So we'll take a look at each one. And Rachel, maybe you could tell us a little bit, because in the early days, he recorded all at home. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But you must have some memories of either just him playing around the house here and there, but do you remember him actually making records while you were around?
Absolutely, yeah. Specifically, Roll Away the Stone. Oh. He recorded that in his apartment in Vancouver, Washington. And I think I was about 7 years old when he was recording that. And so there were times when I had to be in my room and maybe got scolded for not being quiet enough while he was trying to record. And there's actually an article that was in the Oregonian that I sent over to you that was written at that time. And in the article, it talks about how My dad had to make sure he put all of his recording stuff away before I got home from school. So I definitely have a lot of memories of that. And of course, just hearing him play guitar at home. I mean, he was always playing guitar, whether he was working on an album or recording an album, or if we were just hanging out. So lots of good memories with all that.
What kind of things would he play at home? Like, was he practicing material, or was he like just being crazy, or was he like just doing little sketches, or what was his thing?
A combination of all of the above. Sometimes he would just play something silly, just like a song that he made up, a silly story. Sometimes it was practicing. Sometimes it would be old hymns. We used to really like the kids show Arthur when I was a kid. We would watch that together every day after school. So then he would play the Arthur theme song, or just different things like that. So all kinds of stuff he would play.
The Arthur, I'd love to hear Kelly Joe do the Arthur theme song. All right, well, let's talk about the first phase of his recording career for a few minutes. And that includes, so I've sort of like, in my mind, there's some phases of his career. And the first phase includes some early tapes that he made, and then the albums Lead Me On, Roll Away the Stone, which you just talked about, and Shine-Eyed Mr. Zen. Those records to me are, they sort of signify the early stages in his career and his artistry. So I probably first saw Kelly Joe in, I would say, 1996 in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. Nobody really knew who he was at that point. We didn't meet, but he totally slayed me that night. It was at not a church, but the Christian College of UBC, whatever that was called. And he was sort of doing the rounds of like Christian, because he was doing all gospel material, and he was sort of doing the rounds of places like that, playing these little coffee houses. There's probably 15 people there or something. And he was a much gentler musician at that point. I don't think he really understood the power that he had in his hands yet, or his voice. And what a lot of people don't know about Kelly Joe is that he'd spent quite a few years as an upright bass player. He was mostly a free improviser in the Portland jazz scene, and he did talk to me quite a bit about that. He enjoyed it for a while, but I know that doing that, he hit a creative wall at some point and just vanished from the jazz scene, and kind of locked himself away with blues records for a few years. And that's something that he did a lot through his life, as we've already talked about, and we will again. But he just continued to turn these wild corners. But he was like a pretty respected upright jazz bass player. And anyway, so at this point, he's sort of emerging as a new kind of artist, and he hadn't totally locked into what he'd become, but he made a cassette, which I think is kind of hilariously called Traditional Blues. That was considering like how crazy the titles of his records ended up being. His first cassette was called Traditional Blues. And it was just him and a fellow named Dave Mathis on harmonica. And as far as I know, it never really came out. He would sell it at shows. And I was sent a copy of it by Bruno Fisson, I'm not sure. I think he's in France. And he sent us a copy. And I'm going to play a snippet now of a song from that record. And so this is from Traditional Blues, and this is called Screamin' and Hollerin'.
She's just below. patches and just below. That I ever get back down, ain't going back now.
All right, so that was from the first cassette, Traditional Blues. That name just cracks me up for some reason. So anyway, in 1994, he released his first record, which is the first one that I was aware of, and that's called Lead Me On. And it was a bit more realized than that tape from what I heard, but it was still all traditional music. And at this point, he was playing all lap style guitar. And as far as I am aware, he was always in open D tuning still. And let's just listen to the title track of Lead Me On and remember how great of a record this was. So this is the song Lead Me On from the album Lead Me On. So good. So good. Rachel, what can you tell me about that album cover? That little girl looks a little bit familiar.
Yes, that's me. And I was, I think, 4 years old. And if I remember correctly, the plan was not to have me in the cover. They were just trying to get a shot of him outside. That was the house we were living at the time. And
you photobombed him.
Yeah, I photobombed him. So that's how it ended up.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, you kind of make some appearances on different album covers at different times.
I do, yes. The Roll Away the Stone album cover is also me, although it's hard to tell, but it's a Play-Doh house that my dad and I made together that I'm holding up.
So cool.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, so moving on from there, the next two albums that he made, I think of them as a little unit. They are where Kelly Joe seems to come into his own as a songwriter, as a fingerstyle guitarist, and really as an artist. He's still playing a lot of slide guitar, but he's starting to experiment with new instruments, some different tunings, and the forms of the songs are stretching out more, and he's starting to improvise with the songs way more than he did on that first record. So these two albums in particular blew my mind when I heard them and left a lasting impression on me. And so those are Roll Away the Stone, which was 1997, and Shine-Eyed Mr. Zen, which was 1999. Now, my understanding is that Rick Rubin had signed Kelly Joe to American Records, and that deal never came to fruition. Something happened and he was dropped. I don't know, that happened a lot back in those days when people got signed to various deals or whatever, and somebody got fired and shuffled around and Kelly Joe lost his deal. But he told me that Rick Rubin had sent him a little recording rig to make records. And once when I was over at his house in Vancouver, Washington, he showed me his little makeshift studio. And from my memory, it was two AKG 414s, which are, decent condenser microphones, some sort of cheap preamp, and a black ADAT, which was kind of a primitive and kind of crappy early digital recorder, 16-bit digital recorder. And you would record the music onto a VHS tape. And I made a lot of records with those things, and they were pretty funny. And that was how he was recording as well. And yeah, it was like having a big VCR sitting in front of you, and you just hit record on the VCR, and it would record digitally onto that. So I think, as far as I would guess, he made both those records, Roll Away the Stone and Shine-Eyed Mr. Zen, onto that ADAT in his house. And man, did he ever get the most out of those, that fairly modest setup. So Rachel, you mentioned that you were around sometimes. Do you have any recollection of Shine-Eyed Mr. Zen? Were you around for that session as well?
I was not around during the actual recording that I remember anyway, no specifics, but I definitely did go on tour with him for that album. We did a tour through California, and one of the pictures in the slideshow is me introducing him on stage. Yeah. And that was in California during that tour.
Okay. All right. So from those two records, let's have a listen to something from Roll Away the Stone, and actually let's listen to the title track. So on this one, he's playing a 12-string guitar that he showed me a few years later, and it was a Taylor Leo Kottke signature model. Kelly Joe was weirdly into signature model guitars. Like, he had a bunch of Leo Kottke Taylors throughout his life. I know he had a 6-string and a 12-string at various times, and he also had he loved his Eric Clapton. There was a Martin Eric Clapton guitar that he loved, and what were some of the other ones? Oh, I mean, the main guitar in the last few years of his career was a Martin Johnny Cash. So he definitely had his fair share, and this song was recorded on a 12-string Leo Kottke signature model, and this is the title track from Roll Away the Stone. And man, I remember the first time I heard this song just freaks me out.
Early one morning, yeah, all of I looking out across a worn out plain. Early one morning, yeah, all of I look out across a worn out plain. Dust bowl memories, you can hear me shout. Dust bowl memories, you can hear me shout. I wanna roll away the stone. Two-step of slumber, come on, leave my eyes. Oh, leave me bound to go. Two-step of slumber, come on, leave my eyes. Oh, I'm bound to go. Teach me, Lord, thy righteous way. Teach me, Lord, thy righteous way. I want to roll.
Yeah, and let's remember one of his earliest real songwriting masterpieces from the other record we were just talking about. This is from Shine-Eyed Mr. Zen in 1999, and this is one of my favorite Kelly Joe original tunes. This is called River Rat Jimmy.
Drums are still playing, I can see them marching close. This he walks like a shadow, and that he dances like a ghost. The one that looks like Jimmy, Lord, he scares me the most. River Rat Jimmy and Jehoshaphat. River Rat Jimmy and Jehoshaphat. Playing boyhood mumbly peg, 6-inch Bowie blade, out the top of my Red Wing kickers and down a muddy, slippery grade to the fever pitch savannah where Granddaddy lay. Oh, river rat Jimmy and Jehoshaphat, river rat Jimmy and Jehoshaphat. Oh, Lord, oh, day. River Jimmy, ghosty face, ate off the kitchen floor. This woman mom.
So good. River Rat Jimmy. You know, you hear him do that thing rah, in there, and I remember that so well, like being on stage with him, and he sort of had this thing like Glenn Gould or like Keith Jarrett, where he would just kind of start mumbling and growling in the middle of musical phrases, and you know, you just stay out of his way. So that gets us through what I consider phase one of his solo recordings, and we'll come back and talk about some later ones later on. So next we're going to have a look at a slideshow that we've prepared for you, and these photos are kind of in random order, and a lot of them have been sent in from fans and friends. So thanks to everyone who met Kelly Jo over the years and sent these in, and Rachel also was kind enough to share some from her as a youngster with Kelly Jo as her dad, and also Kelly Jo as a young little munchkin, which are the funniest pictures I've ever seen. So let's have a look at this slideshow for you now. Where are you, slideshow? There you are.
Tommy had a watch, a good kind of watch. Wouldn't tell time if you asked it. He didn't have a face, just an ear and an eye to see him with. Tommy stole candy from the corner store, gave it to the mice he made a home for, by the side of the heater next to his guitar. He could neither play nor destroy. Tommy wrote a letter to the office of iniquity, demanding a history of his actions. Oh, the letter was returned just 2 days gone. There was no office of iniquity. Tommy couldn't see so well, and he didn't have a radio. He talked to himself in different voices, sang to himself in a Russian dialect, and then it on a Sunday afternoon. Then Tommy stole a limp, and he borrowed a demeanor so he'd scare anybody who wanna talk away. He suddenly frightened him so bad that he'd pee down his leg as he tried very hard to find the word. Tommy wore the helmet of a frustrated miner, digging for words as though go home. Standing in the mud in his dark gray fedora, wearing his knee-patched dungarees. Tommy was alone when the fire started high behind the wheel of a Colt 45, with a clip full of ether and a bucket full of gas and a belly full of turpentine. Tommy made sure there was no one in danger by knocking on each door like a madman. Then he locked himself in and he did the world in dervish, tipped the candle over on the floor. Tommy was asleep before the firemen came, which was good because they scared him anyway. And all that they found were the mice inside the fridge, in a box with some cheese, and a hand warmer. Run on batteries. And the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, the time shall be no more. In the morning breaks eternal bright and fair. The chosen ones will gather over on the other shore. And the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, hey, when the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. On that bright cloud this morning when the dead in Christ shall rise, in the glory of his resurrection shall all the saints will gather to their home beyond the sky, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Let us labor for the Master from dawn till setting sun. Hear us talk of all this worldless stuff and care. Yeah, when all of life is over and our work on earth is done, yeah, the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the road is called up yonder, when the road is called up yonder, oh, when they roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there.
Whew. A lot of memories. You know, one of the things that strikes me about looking at all those photos of him with like friends and fans and stuff is that for somebody that was so antisocial and quiet and shy, he really spent a lot of time with people and made time to get to know who was out in the audience. He made friends with a lot of people. Usually it was more like one-on-one or one-on-two. He certainly didn't like big groups, but he sure made time to hang out with people. Those are some amazing photos that you sent in too, Rachel. Thank you.
Of course, I'm happy to be able to share some things that people wouldn't normally have seen.
All right, I'd like to take a look at this amazing video that came in from Alison Brown. I believe she's in Australia. I didn't have time to really ask her much about it, but it's a live performance that he does, and I wasn't sure where it was, but I showed a little bit of this to Rachel the other day, and you said that you recognized some elements of where he is in this. So is this?
Yes, that looks like in his old house there was an eating nook, and those red chairs, he had those most of my life. We got those at when I was a kid, and I recognized the clock and the lamp and everything. So
all right, so I guess that solves that mystery. This is I found this performance to be really captivating, and I wanted to share it with everybody. Sort of a way to see him out of the stage element and just privately playing some music. It's a really beautiful rendition of a Hank Williams song called Singing Waterfall. And you really get to see Kelly Joe's really elasticy sense of time in this too, and the way that he plays with melody. And I thought you'd all like to see this. I don't think anyone's ever seen this before. It's very beautiful. It's a singing waterfall.
Here's a singing waterfall in the mountains far away. There's where I long to be, the close of every day. It is where my sweetheart is sleeping down beneath the clay. And oftentimes I wonder why I ever roamed away from the singing waterfall. We meet there in the evening when the sun was sinking low, and listen to the water, what is it sang soft and low. But now she's gone to heaven, and I'm left here all alone. So I have to ask my Lord why he had to take her home from the singing waterfall. dreaming. Oh, I heard my darling call. And then I went to meet her by the singing waterfall. Yeah, she held me close and kissed me just like she used to do. Well, I heard her say, my darling, I'll meet you beyond the blue of the singing waterfall. Is a singing waterfall in the mountains far away. Yeah, that's where I long to be at the close of every day. Yeah, that's where my sweetheart is sleeping down beneath the clay. And oftentimes I wonder why I ever went away from the singing waterfall, from the singing waterfall, from the singing waterfall. Singing waterfall.
Man, that is just a beautiful take on that song. All right, we're going to hear some more from some more people now that sent in some tribute videos. And next up is the incredible string wizard and singer, Mr. Tim O'Brien, coming to us from somewhere in Colorado, I believe. He's playing a festival, I think, this weekend. I'm not sure if he's tuning in right now. He said he might, so but we're gonna have a look at his video that he sent in here. This is Tim O'Brien.
I met Kelly Joe Phelps one afternoon in September of 1997 at a festival in California, and that same evening we played a late night informal set together. And then 9 months later we did some gigs that we actually booked and planned. I showed up at his house in Vancouver, Washington in a pair of ratty old, stinky, worn out black Converse high top tennis shoes. He said, "What size are those?" I told him they were 9s, and he reached in his closet. He had a brand new pair, same size, same color. And I put those on, and we got in his car, we drove down to California. We listened to the mountain music of Kentucky the whole way. Ended up learning a tuning from him, which I'm using right here, and I used it on a record called, or a song called Ireland's Green Shore. You heard that recording, Kelly heard it, and he said, "I gave you my shoes, I gave you my tuning, stay away from my wife." And playing with him was a really wonderful experience. You had to sort of leave your preconception of bar lines and sequences and arrangements kind of behind and just respond to what he did, which was he put out beautiful sounds and he told it the way he felt it. He played it and sang it the way he felt it at that time and place. And you just responded, and it was a cleansing experience. I learned a lot, and I value those and honor those experiences. Later we got to record. We recorded a song called John Riley, and we were at Mike Marshall's house, and Mike was making beautiful food all day long, and there was other people there like Daryl Egger and Todd Phillips, who played bass on the track with us, and the Irish group Alton. And the evening ended with all of us around a big dinner table and a bunch of empty wine bottles, and Kelly Joe pulling red potatoes out of different people's ears. So I just want to say I love Kelly Joe Phelps. I'm going to miss him so much. I was really lucky to be invited into his rarefied musical space, and I'll never forget him.
I know the feeling, Tim. Next, we're going to hear from a very wonderful actor and musician who is a big fan of Kelly Joe's. This is Jeff Daniels.
I'm Jeff Daniels. One of the things that any artist does is steal from those who are better than they are. And Kelly Joe Phelps was one of those players that not only me, but many people stole from. And that's a good thing. That's what we do. It's okay. But with Kelly Joe, it was more than just a riff or a lick or isn't that a C chord? How is he playing that? Why does it sound like only Kelly Joe could make it sound like that? All that technical stuff, that wizardry that he would do up and down the neck and with his right hand. And when I saw him at the Ark in Ann Arbor, he would lose himself in what he was playing, in the music and the notes and it was like we weren't even there. And as an actor, that's what you want. You want to lose control. You want to lose yourself. You want to go into that Alice in Wonderland world. And then the audience just happens to be there to witness it. You could see him chasing that in the way he just hunched over and the way the eyes closed and the way he was playing with his entire self. And that, I stole that. I was sad to hear of his passing, but I was lucky to have heard him.
Yes, indeed. Next, we have a video from a good friend of mine and a good friend of Kelly Joe's. This is Fiona Black, who sent this in from Vancouver, BC. And Fiona Black puts on concerts in Vancouver and put on many Kelly Joe Phelps shows throughout the years. This is Fiona Black.
Hello, everyone, friends, family, supporters, fans of Kelly Joe Phelps. My name is Fiona Black, coming to you from Vancouver. I had the pleasure of presenting Kelly Joe on our stage at Capilano University many times, starting back in the early 2000s. I've been in this business for 25 years, and I can honestly say he's one of the most unforgettable people and performers I've ever had the pleasure to know and to get to hear perform. What a shock to hear of his sudden passing. The last time I presented him was 2014. Said he was going to quit the music business, and I always hoped that he would make his way back. I've thought of him often in the last 8 years, wondered how he was doing, and always hoped to see him again. I remember meeting him and being quite taken by his very shy demeanor, but man, when he got on stage and played the songs, his playing style, he's like no other, and there'll never be another Kelly Joe Phelps. I hope he knew how much his music meant to so many people. all pretty gutted to hear of his passing. Take care. Kind Pirate is the name of this celebration of life, and good luck on your new adventure.
So Kelly Joe got into resonator guitars quite a bit in the last few years of his life, and well, the last few years of his career, and had a huge impact on Matt Ike, who's gone on to build some of the best resonator guitars out there. He has a company called Mule Resonator Guitars, and he wanted to share this with us today. This is Matt Ike.
Hi, my name is Matt Ike. I'd like to extend my heart to Rachel and Kelly Joe's family and friends during this tough time, and as much peace and blessings as can be found as you all adjust to his missing presence. I build resonator guitars for a living because of Kelly Joe. It's a big, long, convoluted story. But I'm sure all the videos have a common theme of inspiration. He would walk out on stage and not say a word until he'd play. And the tension and the importance of that moment, you know, he was so singularly capable of taking people to where they needed to go and to show them something that only he could show them. And the second life-changing moment I had with Kelly Joe was when I saw him play his resonator guitar in Traverse City, and the lights were reflecting off of the chrome, and someone yelled up that it was blinding them. And he did this little wiggle to try to catch it to blind him some more, and everybody chuckled. And that moment inspired me to build those instruments, but that moment has given me every valuable relationship in my life. Tony and Jeff and I were talking about like how incomprehensible it is about the connections we all have with each other because of where he took us. And I want to, I built an instrument for Kelly, and it was one of the very early ones, and I'm sure it was trash, but he wrote me the most beautiful email about it, and that hung on my wall for almost a decade while I was struggling to get things going. And it worked, you know. And I would email him, you know, after he kind of got off the radar, just to say thank you. You know, I'd give him updates like, hey man, I bought a house, hey man, I'm getting married, you know, because it felt like I, you know, like he just had to be a part of it because he was the cause of it. And I want to say thank you so much to all of you who were such a part of his life and supporting him, and such a part of that story of, you know, the groundwork of what he was doing, you know, the bricks that would support that. I feel like you are part of what he gave me, and so I want to say thank you to all of you so much for being part of that grand connection that he was able to establish and bring so many people together. So yeah, so again, my heart goes out to all of you, and hope to see you, to meet you, to say thank you in person sometime down the road.
We have another video here from a friend and fan also. I don't know if he was more of a friend or more of a fan. This is from Peter Carmen, and he sent in this video to check out.
Kelly Jo Phelps, you old so-and-so. You put me in a song once. I'll help you with the details, because you won't remember. It was Thanksgiving weekend of 1999 at a supper club in Newport, Oregon. You and Nicola drove down. You were playing multiple nights. I was there with the woman who would become my wife, though she wasn't yet. And an hour before the show, you spotted us through the windows of the club and you waved us inside. You teased me about my red suspenders, saying I had taken on the classic Oregon look and was blending in just like a local. I bought them in Medford, I said. We had a good laugh. It was about halfway through your set, in the middle of some improvised part of a forgotten song, when we made the briefest of eye contact and you dropped a line about how everybody around here looks the same. You said it with a wince, a little derision and self-incrimination mixed with that smile that looked a little painful, a little rueful. And I felt so seen in that moment, a private little exchange with someone I admired so much. You had that effect on people. Your kindness and your generosity and your humility and your good humor endeared you to people. We loved to hear you play because it was excellent music, but more because you were always risking so much of yourself and the possibility of utter disaster, from which you skipped away impossibly every time I saw you play. Sometimes you surprised yourself with the notes you managed to find and the melody that found you. You told me once that, in spite of yourself, you still end up finding some really nice things about being alive, which ought to make you feel like nothing is really being taken away from you by being confused or questioning or doubting or walking away from it entirely or whatever. It's all human frailty, and everyone's going to be subject to that. In spite of that, I think you can still walk amazingly humble and recognize the gifts that are constantly falling on your head. You've been a gift to me, constantly falling on my head. Your music, yes, but more so your person, your example of remaining open to life, of your commitment to this method acting we call living. Like a comet, you spent a lot of time alone in the cold vacuum of space, and I know it took a toll. Those of us lucky enough to come into your orbit periodically did not forget the experience. You told me once that you loved my writing, that it was gorgeous. I'd be lying if I said I didn't live off of your praise for years. You said something else to me that night in Newport. You said in that self-deprecating way you had, it's only music. And these are only words. They're all we have, and kindness. And we do the best we can with them. You did well.
Thanks for that. And we have one more video here we're going to share. This is from Paul Carreray. Paul is a wonderful songwriter, and he worked a lot with Kelly Jo over the years, both in the studio and on the road. And he sent us this lovely tribute to his good friend, Kelly Jo. This is Paul Carreray. Oh, and I should tell you before this starts, I think this one is pretty quiet, so just be aware that I've turned it up as much as I can here, but if you have a hard time hearing him, you can crank her up on your end.
Hi, my name is Paul Carreray. I was fortunate enough to open up for Kelly Jo more than 100 times. He even produced one of my records for me, which basically meant like sitting 2 feet away from me the whole time going, yeah, what else, and making me crazy nervous. Sometimes on some of the more fanciful guitar passages, he actually used to razz me, and out of nowhere he'd just go, jazz chord, jazz chord like he was like a kid playing Punch Buggy or something. This is all way back in the day before everybody's chronic pain, you know. And back then, like passing through the Northwest, I have no idea how many times I slept on the wood floor of his office before he finally said I could use his daughter's empty bed. Maybe that's why he kept me around a lot, because I tried not to ask too much, even during, you know, the latest of our late night phone calls. And in return, he kind of took care of me, habitually hiding a couple $100 in my guitar case after shows, rolling me cigarettes when I was failing at quitting again, buying me food. And I know we really loved each other, and I know that we seemingly had enough in common that some of my friends and family worried sometimes. But he'd kiss me on the mouth sometimes, and he always wanted to know what I was listening to. Before shows, he'd taunt me by playing these like cartoonish versions of my guitar parts. And he touched my face a lot. And I showed him YouTube for the first time. And he played me VHS tapes of him playing bass while wearing parachute pants like a long time ago. Once he played me a Chick Corea live record and he started crying. When he'd come home from tour, he had this neighbor lady across the street, and she'd bring her guitar over because she wasn't good at tuning it. And so Kelly would tune it and she would go back, and then and sometimes he would disappear and people would call me and ask to see if I'd seen him, and I usually had not. I was telling Rachel yesterday that so much of what I used to really care about, what really used to make my life vibrate with purpose, was chasing this certain connection. And it was a connection to those that had come and gone. Music makers mostly, like folks who had seen and been hurt and felt pain, but who had found meaning and a reason to be here. And, you know, even if it's just like in the corner of your eye, like this presence, that would be like proof that the world was more than this. And burning it all a bit wild and drinking and performing at the edge of your ability and leaving the room a little bit. Those are all reliable ways to get the spirits to show up. 1 second, you're on the front end of a comet, and the next under the calmest, you know, wisest, pinkest sky. Kelly seemed a brother on that same hunt, but he also just as often felt like he had more in common with the destination, like he already was somewhere else. And I still don't know why or what he was carrying. So to those that loved him, you know, I'm really sorry. And everybody wanted a different phone call. And even more peace to those that were hurt by him, because I can't imagine. I didn't want to hang up with Rachel yesterday. And hanging up sort of felt like closing the case. And plus there were flickers of a voice that I hadn't heard in 10 years. And Kelly was one of the best friends that I ever had. You know, he was considerate and he was generous and hilarious, and he had beautiful eyes, and he could grow his beautiful hair very, very fast. And he used to keep the tidiest house. I'm talking about like decorative soaps. I just really loved him. So thanks a lot. And thanks to you, Kelly, too. Thanks.